Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. You can follow The Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS. And as always, remember to give the video a thumbs up and ring that bell to get notifications whenever The Lines releases a new sports betting video on any market, including the Preakness Stakes. And with that in mind, it's time to introduce a familiar face, Simon Bray, a Grade 1 winning trainer and currently an analyst for FanDuel Racing. You can follow him on Twitter at FanDuel TV. Simon, how are you doing today, Simon?
I'm doing great. Absolutely fantastic, Eli.
And let's get into the Preakness Stakes, which begin on Saturday night. Obviously, races before the main event over in Baltimore, and you'll be on site, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But Simon, just quick takeaways from the Kentucky Derby, and as we see now on the morning line, oddsboard Mage, which won the Kentucky Derby, is the favorite at 8-5 on the morning line odds.
Yeah, I mean, look, personally, as far as Mage goes, I was totally wrong. I like the Florida Derby. I like Forte going into the Kentucky Derby a little bit, despite what happened with him in the scratch. So by definition, if you think Forte's got a shot, you probably should have, or at least I probably should have thought that Mage had a chance in the Derby. But I just thought it was a little too much too soon. But I think we're in a different era now, Eli, with the Kentucky Derby. Less is more. We saw that with Justify. We've seen it with Mage. He didn't run it too. And he proved to be the best horse. And yeah, he's the only one coming back in the Preakness. That's the first time that's happened in the history of the Triple Crown. So he's a deserved favorite. Usually the Derby winner is one of the top two betting choices in the second jewel of the Triple Crown, and that's the case on Saturday.
And when we look at the field, it's a pretty small crop of horses as well, an 8-horse field for the 2023 Preakness. So in terms of handicapping the Preakness, how do you usually go about it in comparison to other races? Maybe a little bit of a difference there for you, as we discussed on our Kentucky Derby betting preview. Along with that, a smaller field of horses means what, in theory, for betting on this race?
Yeah, I think it means maybe a little less pace. We talked about the pace. We saw how fast it was in the Derby. 20 horses lined up in the gate. They went extremely fast, the opening half mile. And that helped Mage's closing kick, right? I mean, he came from way downtown like he did in his last two starts. That's going to be a different situation here on Saturday, I think, looking at the race and seeing the way the race shapes up. As far as new competition, I mean, he beat everyone he had to, and he did it fair and square in the Derby. And, 36 Derby winners have gone on to win the Preakness. The last two that did it actually went on to win the Triple Crown. And maybe Mage is sitting in that situation come the first week in June. We'll see. But I think he's got to overcome, the pace of the race on Saturday. His first two starts, he shows speed. Maybe he can. Maybe he's a little more adaptable than what we think he's done his last two starts. So there are going to be some fresh faces. National Treasure, Bob Baffert back on the Triple Crown scene, and First Mission for Brad Cox, who comes in off two very good wins, although lightly raced, just like Mage was going into the Derby.
When it comes to the track itself, are there any distinct features that pertain to handicapping?
I don't think so. I mean, people say the tighter turns, this and that. I think that's all nonsense. In fact, that's been proven to be total hogwash. So I don't see an issue here, especially with the shorter field. The Derby's unique. We have to handicap it a little differently. Post position has a big say in the race. 20 horses going into the field, probably out of the 20, on any given day, maybe 8 or 9 are not truly belong in the race. But here you've got a competitive field, not a huge field. I just think you handicap this like you would any other race. Just take it from the form and the way the race shapes up from a speed standpoint.
So let's take a look at Mage's odds. I know you broke down why maybe you should have considered him for the Kentucky Derby in hindsight, but 8-5 odds. I know you said those are justified. Is the price tag, though, maybe a little bit overvalued just in terms of the context of a short and small field in general, on top of the fact that we're not getting a horse that competed in the Kentucky Derby?
Right, exactly. I mean, look, put it this way, Mage should be favorite in the Preakness. Historically, that's always been the case. The Derby winner always goes into the Preakness as a favorite or a close second choice. There's no question about that. I mean, at this point, he's the best 3-year-old in the country, right? So he should be favored. He won the Kentucky Derby. There's every reason he should be favored. If 8-5 might seem a little short for the reasons I mentioned, just from his running style. He came from 10 lengths back in the Derby. He came from about 12 lengths back in the Florida Derby. With that being said, the first 2 starts of his career, he laid a little closer. So I think he can be a little tractable. The unique situation about the Preakness, obviously, is the quick turnaround coming back in 2 weeks. That's why we're missing a lot of horses out of the Derby. There's no reason to do it. And like I said, it's the first time in the history of the Triple Crown that other also-rans haven't come back in here. I don't think there's just that much upside. We saw some scratches Derby week. Some horses didn't get in. So, it's a little different. But Gustavo Delgado, not many people might know, in his native country in South America, he's won 2 Triple Crowns with the same type of scheduling, 2 weeks and 3 weeks. So he's a trainer who knows how to bring a horse back in 2 weeks. But from a price standpoint, he should be favored. I wouldn't be willing to take a too short a price on him. I think, 9-5, 8-5, probably right where he belongs. Any shorter than that, I think, you tread carefully.
And if you look at Triple Crown odds, depending on the shop, Mage is around plus 675 to win the Triple Crown. Obviously has to win the Preakness Stakes and the Belmont coming up here in a few weeks. But if we look at the rest of the morning line odds, Simon, First Mission, the second shortest odds with jockey Luis Saez at 5-2. And above that, National Treasure 4-1. So as we kind of gauge the rest of the odds board for the Preakness Stakes, which horses stand out to you?
Okay, I think you can look at, a couple of horses in here. I think National Treasure absolutely comes into the conversation right from the get-go. A couple of reasons. It's the return of Bob Baffert to the Triple Crown scene. It's a horse he's going to have tremendous speed. They're putting the blinkers on. That tells you the intent to go to the lead. And lo and behold, he's got the 1 hole. He's got the inside post. I mean, that's a great situation for a horse that wants to get the lead and maybe can be quicker than Mage and get the jump on him in the early stages. I mean, it's clear as day what they're going to do with National Treasure. And he could lead them the mile on the 16th trip. I've seen it. Baffert did it in the Derby with Authentic, with the same rider, John Velasquez. And John's a very good front-running rider. So I could see National Treasure being a major, major factor in here, at least in the early stages. And then my X factor for this race is a horse that's kind of coming under the radar for a very good trainer in Shug McGee, Perform. He won the Federico Tessio. That's kind of the local prep for the Preakness. It's run the same day as the Lexington Stakes, which is the last prep for the Derby that First Mission won. But Perform kind of snuck under the radar, winning the Federico Tessio. He needs to pace to close into, but typical Shug fashion. He's got the Shug running style. He comes from off of it, and he's getting better as the races get longer. He's undefeated in his last 2 starts, and both those were around the 2 turns of 1 mile and 40, 1 mile and 8. He's going 1 mile and 3/16, a little more ground. It's going to help him, not hurt him. He's going to be a decent price. A must-use horse in the exotic wages, Perform, I think, with Shug McGee.
And you mentioned Bob Baffert within that context, the first race for him in terms of the Triple Crown legs for the first time since 2021, so a couple of years back. And you mentioned exotics there, so as we look at some of the other long shots potentially, are there any other horses that you would consider for that betting market?
Yeah, I mean, Perform, First Mission, I don't think he's going to be too much of a long shot. He's going to get a lot of play, right? Because he's the fresh face. Everyone wants to gravitate to the fresh face that's lightly exposed, that could cause an upset with Mage. So First Mission's going to come into the conversation, but he's going to be, I think, too short of a price. I mean, Blazing Sevens is interesting for Chad Brown. The fact Chad shows up here, he's run behind Forte a couple of times. Once is in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he was trounced in the Fountain of Youth, but he came back with an okay effort in the Bluegrass. I mean, he could be interesting, just the fact that Chad brings him up here. And then Red Route 1 for Steve Asmussen, another one going to be compromised by, a lack of early speed. But if, National Treasure goes to the front, if Coffee with Chris, who's the ultimate long shot here, he's got one way to go. They set the table for these closers, then Red Route 1 absolutely will be a horse to maybe use in a trifecta.
Great betting insight there from the one and only Simon Bray. And Simon, as we wrap this podcast up here, on the Lines YouTube channel and the Lines Podcast Network. Remember to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. What can horse racing fans and bettors, for that matter, expect from FanDuel TV and FanDuel Racing? And just a reminder, we have a promo up on thelines.com if you want to partake in betting on the Preakness with FanDuel Racing. But for you and your team's coverage, what can bettors and horse racing fans look forward to come Saturday?
Well, in a nutshell, everything. I don't think you've got enough time to cover all what we're going to do. I mean, it's going to be soup to nuts, top to bottom, full coverage on our TV network and the FanDuel Sportsbook app. We've got a lot of content on social media, a lot, and in the FanDuel TV Plus app as well. So we're going to have on-site coverage Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Obviously, we can't do anything during the NBC window, but that's been the case for, since they've had the coverage of the Triple Crown. So we're down for a couple of hours, but outside of that NBC window, we have wall-to-wall coverage, and you can get it on all our channels and platforms, social media, FanDuel Sportsbook, the FanDuel TV Plus app, and on our FanDuel TV channel as well. So looking forward to it, full team coverage.
You won't want to miss it. Be sure to follow FanDuel TV, Simon, for the latest on their coverage of the Preakness Stakes Grade 1 winning trainer, and of course on air with FanDuel TV Racing, breaking down the Preakness Stakes. And we'll be sure to have him back on, hopefully, if his time allows for it, for the Belmont. I really appreciate the time, Simon, and we'll talk to you hopefully very soon.
Yeah, hopefully for the Belmont. I mean, from a fan standpoint, real quick, I'd like to be sitting here in about 3.5 weeks' time talking about Mage going for a Triple Crown, but we'll see how it plays out Saturday.
Yeah, and those odds are certainly intriguing at around plus 675, but appreciate the time, Simon, and thanks for watching and listening to the latest Beat the Closing Number presented by thelines.com. Remember to head over to our Discord channel to get all of our staff bets on the Preakness, and we'll have much more coverage, written content over at thelines.com as well. Thanks for watching and listening. So long, everybody.